The new 2024 Ontario Building Code is now out and it's coming into effect this January. We're going to go over some of the things you need to be aware of in terms of changes and how this affects second suites, multiplex conversions, and detached garden suites. Let's get into it. Thanks for watching. This is Andy from Suite Additions. If you're new here, we're an architectural design company helping homeowners and investors create more housing units and generate long-term wealth using the max suite strategy. Over the years, we've completed many small-scale infill projects and helped over 400 clients legally convert their homes to multiple units, boosting cash flow and house value. Additionally, we have a comprehensive max suite strategy in-person training program and investor community. Our next session is coming up. If you're interested, please check out the details in the description below. Also, it would help us out if you can give us a like and subscribe so that we can get this message out to more people. As you may be aware, the new 2024 Ontario Building Code has finally come out, and this has big implications on how homes will be constructed going forward. Stay tuned until the end and we'll explain how you can get a full version of the code for free, which used to cost several $100s. Now, the information I'm going to cover here is great for architects, designers, engineers, and contractors. If you're an investor or home buyer who's looking for a property to implement some of the max suite housing options we discuss on our channel, you might be interested in this information as well. It'll give you an idea of what things you may need to pay attention to. Now, for the most part, we won't get into the details of the changes because most of it is a bit complicated and nuanced. I will outline the items and provide code references, and you can download a free copy of the code and review it for yourself. But of course, it's important to engage the right professional to help you navigate the details, especially before you make any big financial transactions. So in this video, we're going to first discuss the overall changes to the building code. Then we're going to get into some of the changes between the old code and the new code for additional second suites and small building 3 and 4 unit conversions. We won't be discussing garden suites for the most part because the code requirements are pretty much the same as for standard houses, except that the structure is smaller. Now, if it's a garden suite or ADU that is 2 units, which some municipalities now permit, then it will be treated as a house with a secondary suite, which we will cover in this discussion. Before we dive in, we want to let you know that there are close to 2,000 items revised, so it's obvious this video is not intended to give you any sort of a comprehensive list. And it's not even meant to cover all the changes regarding additional suites. Our goal is to give you an overview and highlight some of the major things we come across on a day-to-day basis when it comes to max suite projects. If you're a professional in this space or just someone who wants to know the ins and outs, we recommend that you visit the website of the Ontario Building Officials Association to determine where you can learn more. Link is in the description. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Now, if you're involved with houses and small buildings, you would be primarily looking at Part 9 of the Building Code. You would also be looking at Part 11 of the code, which covers retrofits for buildings that are older than 5 years. Now, there are other important sections in the code that would be relevant, such as Part 6 for all buildings, Part 7 for plumbing, SB 3 for fire assembly, and SB 12 for energy efficiency design. But we won't be getting into much of that here. Our goal is to highlight the major items within Part 9 and Part 11 that comprise of some of the changes for second suites and small multiplexes. Keep in mind that the current time of this video in September 2024, we're still using the 2012 code, and there will be a transition period from January to March of 2025 and full adoption in April 2025. At a very high level, here are some of the major changes. The Ontario Building Code has harmonized with the 2020 National Building Code, getting rid of around 1,700 technical variations. It has gotten rid of its definition of house, which is for up to 2 units, and aligned with the national code under secondary suites, with the exception of maintaining flexibility with suite sizes. There's also a new part addressing farm buildings, and all new houses will require provisions for radon mitigation and updates for prefabricated septic tanks and sewage holding tanks. Overall, it's a more simpler and easier to navigate building code with one page referencing the 2020 National Building Code for harmonized sections and a separate document for Ontario-specific amendments. Now let's get into some of the items specific to additional suites and small multi-unit conversions. Firstly, in the existing code, we have the definition for house, which is a detached house, semi-detached house, or row house containing not more than 2 dwelling units. This term has been substituted in the new 2024 code with secondary suite, which means a self-contained dwelling unit. Keep in mind that being in Canada, we use the metric system, which is what the code is written in. But the reality of small-scale construction and real estate in Canada is measured much in imperial, so we'll be rounding our numbers to be more digestible in practical real estate and construction terms. Now, if you don't believe me, when was the last time you heard 38 by 89 instead of a 2x4? Let's first discuss one of the biggest issues for suite conversions, which are ceiling heights under Table 9531 in both the old and new building code. Both codes have approximately 6 feet 11 inches for basements in new homes, and the new code, however, qualifies that second suites can be 6 feet 5 inches under Clause 2 even for new homes. In the old code, second suites can be 6 feet 5 inches only if it's a home greater than 5 years old under Part 11 C102. In the new code under Part 11 C105, it states that spaces in dwelling units other than second suites can also be 6 feet 5 inches for homes greater than 5 years, which appears to indicate that older home renovations will have leniency for heights even in 3 and 4 unit multi-unit conversions. This is important because based on the old code, if you were to convert a legal 2-unit home to 3 units, the existing legal basement suite may now be considered illegal under the small building designation. There are other provisions regarding heights under ducts and beams as well as for means of egress, so you should look into this in more detail. Next, let's discuss fire separation. Section 910 914 in the 2012 code has a specific time-based requirement for a fire separation for 2 units in new houses and can be reduced if there are interconnected smoke alarms under Part 11 C152. For small building conversions to 3 and 4 units, new homes require a more stringent fire separation and older homes can also be reduced. In the new code, section 910 916, the requirements are still the same for new homes and there are also reduced requirements for old homes and small buildings under Part 11 C156. However, they've added an extra item for secondary suites in new houses where there may be exemptions if there's a smoke-tight wall and ceiling barrier with a single layer of 5/8 Type X drywall on both sides of the wall and on the bottom side of a ceiling. Next, we're going to talk about egress requirements, which is important for escape in case of a fire. Now, there aren't really any significant changes here for 2-unit houses and 3 and 4 unit small building conversions. We do recommend that you go through the following sections in detail to get a good idea of the requirements. Section 9991 in both codes discusses the requirements for emergency egress when it comes to going up or down individual floors for access. And for older homes under Part 11 C139 of both the old and new code, 3 different options for emergency egress are available to homes with second suites. Additionally, for new houses and small building conversions, Section 99101 describes the egress requirements for any floors that contain a bedroom. For older homes under Part 11 C137 of the old code and C140 of the new code, there are exemptions for second suites. Next, let's outline another very important aspect of safety for second suites and multi-unit conversions, and that is smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. In Section 91019, in new houses and small buildings, a smoke alarm with a visual signaling component, also referred to commonly as a strobe light, is required in every unit, in the bedrooms of each unit, and any shared means of egress. This part does not change between the old code and the new code. The power supply in both codes still needs to be hardwired to the electrical panel for new homes, but for old homes, they can be battery powered. There is a change in terms of the interconnectivity requirements for homes with secondary suites under 910, 19.5, which now allow for wireless connections, whereas previously they had to be hardwired together. The interconnectivity of small multi-unit conversions, however, still are required to be hardwired. Now, when it comes to carbon monoxide alarms for new homes under Section 933.4.2 in the old code and 932.39a in the new code, it outlines the requirements in terms of specific locations. This should be verified in all new installations. Where there are few burning appliances, they need to be installed adjacent to each sleeping area in a suite. And in the case where a service room is not within a suite, a carbon monoxide alarm must be installed inside the service room and adjacent to every sleeping area that itself is adjacent to a service room. In the new code, there are additional location attributes that can get pretty complicated depending on the number of suites and mechanical equipment. We won't go through the details here, but wanted to let you know that this area needs to be thoroughly analyzed on any specific project. In terms of power source for carbon monoxide alarms under 933.4.3 in the old code and 932.39c in the new code, they need to be connected permanently to an electrical circuit. For older homes over 5 years, under Part 11C 197 in the old code and C201 in the new code, both permit carbon monoxide alarms to be battery operated or plugged into an electrical outlet. Next, we'll touch on sharing a single forced air heating system. This actually also does not change, but it's worth reminding everyone. Both the old code under 62391 and the new code under 6327 does not permit air from one unit to travel to another unit. However, if the building is older than 5 years, under Part C95 in the existing code and C97 in the new code, as long as it does not contain more than 4 dwelling units, the existing heating and cooling system can be used as long as there are full smoke alarms installed and an induct smoke detector is installed that will turn off the power and fuel supply to the heating system. The last item we will mention is the separation of service room, also known as the mechanical room, from the rest of the building. There are some changes here, and this part can get a bit confusing. There are 2 items on this in the code. In both the old and new code under 9.10.10.3, it outlines that service rooms need to be separated from the rest of the building with a 1-hour fire separation. But then it goes on to say that it is not required if the service equipment is standard, such as a furnace and water heater. The next part under 9.10.10.4, it goes to state additional exemptions for homes of a certain size and a number of floors which would be exempt from a fire separation. For older homes under Part 11 C153 of the old code and C157 in the new code, there are potential additional reductions in fire separation requirements where we're unable to meet the requirements outlined above. This would apply to both 2-unit conversions and small building conversions of 3 and 4 units. Some of these changes can be complicated, so we recommend that you look through the code for more detailed information. We're going to stop here as these are some of the major items we encounter for conversions on a daily basis. Unfortunately, there were several items in the code that hasn't changed, which I was hoping they would. This would have made things easier for multi-unit conversions and still maintain safety. I will outline a couple of them here. The first are minimum room sizes for living rooms, dining rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms under Section 9.5. My opinion is that these minimums should have been lowered to allow for smaller spaces such as garage conversions and small garden suites. Another item that they didn't adjust, which I felt they should have, are minimum window areas for natural lighting under 9.7.2.3. This has been a major issue for basement conversions, in particular due to challenges with new window openings. By reducing or eliminating this requirement, many more housing units would be able to be built without making things any less unsafe, as long as we have the proper egress requirements. Perhaps these 2 items are something the ministry can adjust in the future, and I'll definitely make a push for these 2 issues from a policy perspective. So I hope this gave you a starting point for understanding some of the changes upcoming in the new 2024 Ontario Building Code coming into effect in January next year. You should be aware that although this code is enforced in all municipalities across Ontario, some cities and towns may interpret things a bit differently, and this is why it's good to be specialized in a particular municipality and understand their best practices. Of course, always consult with a professional before doing any work or making any major decisions. So now, let's show you how you can get your hands on a copy of the building code for free. Now, when I first started learning about the Ontario Building Code nearly 30 years ago, I had to go into the Ryerson bookstore and buy these two massive binders for several $100s, and I've done that several times throughout the years as new versions got released. Worst of all, I had to go through these binders manually many times to find what I was looking for. These days, not only is it entirely free for you, but you have the electronic version that you can simply do a Control F to find what you're looking for. Or you can ask ChatGPT to direct you to the right section of the code to ask further. So to get a copy for non-commercial use, you can use the link in the description or Google request a digital copy of the 2024 building code. Let me know if you have any experience with the building code and if you have any recommendations on improvements as it relates to second suites and multi-unit conversions. We hope this video was helpful. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. To learn more about the Max Suite strategy, download our free guides at suiteeditions.com and get started. And if you enjoyed this video, here's another great one for you.